I really like what they've done with the shape of the new BRZ or the Toyota GR86. I mean, this appears actually larger than the old car, but it's not. It's about the same dimensions as before. A tiny little bit longer, a tiny little bit wider, but the proportions are just right. What you're probably not seeing from that side profile view are the nice bulging arches out the rear fender. It gives it a nice hunkered down, sexy look. And out the rear, the integrated spoiler really finishes off this tapered roof in an elegant way. What's also fantastic about the BRZ is that from a technical standpoint, it's still an enthusiast's dream. Very lightweight, still rear-wheel drive, manual transmission. Yes, you can have it with an automatic, but don't get that one unless you're silly or drunk. And it's just a naturally aspirated Boxster engine. But Subaru and Toyota updated the vehicle in the areas that matter. There's now a larger engine under the hood, aluminum body panels on the roof, the hood, and the front fenders to compensate for the added weight of the larger engine. And fun fact, Subaru and Toyota say that the power-to-weight ratio of this new model is actually higher than the old one. Now, I have always adored the BRZ or Toyota 86 or Scion FRS, whatever you want to call it. It was always a fantastic formula. It was the answer to the Mazda Miata, which is always the answer apparently, but it was really a direct rival to the Mazda because it was fun, lightweight, and put a smile on your face. This is a perfect example of having more fun driving a slow car fast than a fast car fast. So come with me and we'll discover everything the new Subaru BRZ has to offer. So where the Toyobaru twins really distinguished themselves from a Mazda MX-5 was in the interior space in the cockpit. I've always found I was more comfortable in a Subaru BRZ than a Mazda MX-5. I'm obviously a big guy and I don't have much issue with the cockpit. Now they've improved it for this second generation model. Now my seat isn't even pulled all the way back yet. I still have some way. So this is an improvement over the last car. I also like the adjustability of this seat. I can really adjust it up in height, but I can sit down very low in the vehicle. For people with high torsos like myself, it avoids from having the line of the roof that cuts your visibility. This way, I'm right in tune with the window opening. It's the same story for the steering wheel. By the way, this wheel is super sweet to hold. It looks very sporty. It's got a nice grip to it. It's very thin, very similar to what Porsche does. Now the transmission, the manual gear lever is right here next to my right hand. I still have a physical handbrake that's also really neat. And the pedals are closely spaced, but not too closely spaced for people with big feet like yours truly. So it's great for heel and toe driving, but at least my feet aren't overlapping over each other. And of course, I have more adjustability with the steering wheel. It really adjusts in a whole bunch of different ways. So you can really find your preferred seating position in the BRZ, which is fantastic considering that it's a relatively small car. Yes, it's still cramped in here. The bolsters are limit tight in my case, but it is somewhat comfortable considering the tight interior. Subaru also improved the build quality of this car. The materials used are much better. It's not perfect. There's still some hard plastics here and there, but these are the results of cost cutting. Remember, this car, fully loaded, never exceeds $38,000. Base price $32,000 for a Subaru BRZ. That's in a world where inflation is affecting everything. Everything has gotten super expensive, but the price of this sports car remains somewhat attainable. So finally, a new engine. It's still a Boxster flat 4, but it goes from 2 liters to 2.4 liters, giving it a lot more low-end torque and more horsepower. Horsepower goes from 205 to 228 in the new BRZ, and torque goes from 156 to 184 pound-feet. More importantly, the torque kicks in now a lot lower. It kicks in at 2,400 RPM compared to before where it only kicked in at around 6,000 RPM. So what that means is that you get a much more linear power delivery because the red line is the same. This thing still develops its peak horsepower at 7,000 RPM. Yes, 7,000 RPM. So it's still a very rev-happy engine. Another characteristic that they corrected with this new model is the annoying torque dip in the power band that the other model had. If you've driven a BRZ or an FRS or an 86 of the previous generation, you probably noticed that as you were climbing through the revs, At around 4,500 RPM, nothing would happen. It just felt like the engine had just like fallen out of the engine bay, and then power came back on again. That is now gone. So it sounds fantastic. There is some pumped-in audio now that you didn't get in the previous car, which kind of ruins the experience, but you're still feeling that there is a tiny little Boxster engine right here working overtime. And yeah, a lot peppier, a lot more nervous than the last one. The throttle response is fantastic. Look at this. I'm barely touching the throttle. See how it's reacting? There are no delays, no turbo lags, no delays in the transmission because I've got a good old 6-speed manual, and there's no rev hang. I don't know how Subaru and Toyota managed to do this with a modern engine with current emission standards. There's no rev hang. So when I come up the red line and I shift, it's right away. It's instantaneous because the ratios are very short. The BRZ still does a fantastic job of making you feel like you're driving a much faster car than it is in reality. Now, mind you, it's not exactly slow. It will hit 100 kilometers an hour from a standstill in about 5.6 seconds. That's still respectfully quick, but it's not blindfully quick. It's just good enough. Oh yeah, very communicative. And because it's so lightweight and because it's so nimble, you can really attack a corner. And the flat 4 engine gives it a nice and low center of gravity up in the front. And you're really feeling that rear move around. That's one thing they kept about the BRZ, is how the rear likes to wiggle. It's telling you what's going on. Traction control is on in my case, but if you hold on the track button, there's a pre-selected mode that leaves traction control on, but gives you a bit more play out of that rear limited slip differential. And now you're really feeling it as you're exiting a corner and you're applying throttle. This thing is just so much fun. They've also improved the level of refinement in the new BRZ. It's a bit more spacious than before. It feels better on the road. It doesn't feel like a last-minute skunkworks project like the old car. This feels a lot more buttoned down, and as if the engineers behind it put a lot more thought in making a good quality sports car. This is obviously designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. And because it's still a rear-wheel drive, when you remove traction control, well, this thing will still do a proper burnout. Oh my God, this is a joy to drive. Wow, what a thing. The weight distribution is so good in this thing that even when the ass goes out, you can bring it back so quickly. You just enter a corner like a superhero like this, and you just feel it just floating over the corner. You can never be too brutal with it. It just really takes it on. But my God, that rear end just loves to wiggle. Now I have traction control off and it's just playing around back there. It's telling me, come on, buddy, come on, push me harder so I can throw you out in a drift maneuver. This is a fun car, and you can really sense that every single thing about this vehicle was designed to put a smile on your face. It feels great to be driving a car like this in the world of complicated SUVs and expensive electric vehicles. Now this thing is under $40,000. You're getting performance that kind of resembles a Porsche Cayman. Okay, it's not as sophisticated as a Porsche, not as quick either, but I mean, it's arguably just as much fun. Look at that little engine. 2.4 liter. Now this is the same 2.4 liter Boxster engine that Subaru puts in the Outback. It's turbocharged in these engines. In this case, it's naturally aspirated with Toyota's D4S direct injection system, and it's great. It's a lot peppier than it used to be. Now there are some drawbacks, however, like the old BRZ. I find that storage room is kind of limited. Obviously the rear seats are useless in this car. The cup holders are far back. At least it's better than the last car that you had to kind of like assemble your own cup holders. They're hidden here in this compartment. The problem is that when you open the compartment, you're kind of losing away from the armrest here on the center console. You need to always leave it closed if you want to rest your arm. There's also no area where I can put my phone. I do have USB ports in here, but there's no compartment to put my phone. I just dump it in the cup holders like in the old car. And the interior design is only fine. While the outside is absolutely gorgeous, the interior is functional. Subaru tried to put some little cute toggle switches down here, but you know, they look kind of flimsy. The circular air vents with a little screen in there have a nice little Japanese feel and look. The infotainment system doesn't look particularly modern, but it works, and that's what you want from a Japanese sports car. I do like the digital interface, though. It changes if you're in track or normal mode, and it has a nice 90s vibe to it in the way the pixels are organized in the screen. I don't know if it's done on purpose, but it's very Japanese, and I like that. Off the corner here, there you go. It's a breeze. It's just a breeze to drive. So there you have it. There's no point in talking about cargo space or other metrics about this car. What you guys want to know is it fun to drive? The answer is yes. Is it better than the other car? It is. I mean, Toyota and Subaru just basically improved the areas that mattered. The Subaru BRZ is up there among the best sports cars I've driven this year.